Hurricane season is underway. Each year from June 1st through November 30th, tropical or subtropical cyclones are most likely to form in the Atlantic Basin. Now, even though we're hundreds of miles from the coast, we still have to be aware of tropical systems. The Georgia coast sees more significant flooding during events like hurricanes, and that's why scientists and engineers with Georgia Tech are installing a network of sea level sensors along the coastline. They're meant to help with emergency planning and response during weather events. Meteorologist Melissa Nord spoke with one of those scientists behind the project.
Thank you for talking to us today. Tell me a little bit about how the Smart Sea Level Sensors project came about.
So my background is computer science, networking technology at Georgia Tech. And so I come at this from the what are the things we can do with low-cost sensors now that they're so widely available, and with the experience of some flooding events on the coast of Georgia and the lack of real insight and data. There were basically National Weather Service only operated 2 online weather stations along the coast of Georgia, and we just didn't have enough visibility into what's happening locally in our communities. Basically going around giving talks, pitching ideas of things we might do, and had the good fortune to meet with the assistant director at Chatham Emergency Management down in Savannah, and he challenged us with the goal of, can you tell me when rising water has gotten high enough that it might actually compromise the structure? Because we need to send an inspector out. And so we said, yeah, I think we can do that. This project is about providing data about what's going on in our communities with regards to flooding and changing climate and the impacts on our daily lives, and having real information to share with folks. They come to us when we're installing about stories about, we think it's flooding more, but we're not sure why, and we can help them understand that and really share that with others about what's really happening.
And one application with an example before these went in were Hurricanes Maria and Irma, right? Down in the Savannah area, they didn't have this many sensors of real-time data of what are the waters doing.
Exactly. And what we saw is that, what we continue to see is that with each storm event, there's really a different kind of impact around the community. Some places flood all the time, but many places only flood depending on which way the wind is blowing or how much rain there was or where we are in the tide cycle. And so getting that local visibility into how different storms flood in different areas, that's what part of what this project allows us to do.
So these don't just look at rising tidal floods, but also if we have a heavy rainfall event and all the water comes rushing down in some of those waterways, does this monitor those type of flood events too?
Absolutely. It's all about measuring the rising water regardless of where it comes from. And while our first applications and our first focus was on the coastal areas where storm surge and tide events are an issue, we've actually deployed more inland now, working on a study on the Little Ogeechee River floodplain, basically, and studying the impacts of focusing more on rain events. So we're doing a little bit of both.
Let's talk a little bit more about Georgia's coastline. What kind of changes have we seen to the coastline in the last recent decades, and frequency of flood events on the coastline increasing? How are these helping to better monitor those changes over the next maybe 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, so the Georgia coast is a special place, right? It is some of the richest tidal marshland that we have in the U.S. 100 miles of very interesting geography. And what that means is it's a very dynamic place that changes a little bit with each storm, right? So we see that on the Barrier Islands, for instance, as erosion happens on one end, but sand is deposited on the other end, for instance. What we've seen with these sort of increasing flood events that we are experiencing, the water spends more time higher. It changes what plants grow where. We actually see the marsh moving in terms of the marsh grasses growing farther inland where they wouldn't have grown before because now they get more saltwater exposure with tides. So over time, you see some pretty dramatic changes that, having this kind of monitoring equipment gives us real data to explain to people and to document.
Tell us a little bit about how the sensor's built and where it's built.
Yeah, it's really a fun part of the story. The design of the sensor, we did that with our team at Georgia Tech, some research scientists who are really good at taking our crazy ideas and turning it into something that can work. And so that processor board in the middle that's at the heart of it, where the sensor data comes in, and then that antenna is the radio that transmits it out so that we can get the data in real time. This is an application where the unit is asleep most of the time, and so to conserve battery, and then about once every 5 minutes it wakes up, takes a measurement, sends that off to us, and goes back to sleep to save the battery. The idea is so that it can be completely self-contained and operate for a year without having to be cleaned or serviced. We did the design here, but we've been working with the Savannah Chatham Public Schools, and in particular a high school in Savannah called Jenkins High School, where one of the teachers has incorporated this project into his curriculum so that we bring the students several bags of parts in January, and over the course of the semester they learn to solder the parts together. They learn to drill holes in the casing and do the assembly. They learn about the electronics and the networking side so they can make sure the data is working. They built a dunk tank so they can put them in the water and make sure that they don't leak and all those kinds of things. And then together we get to sort of celebrate in May the new batch of sensors that get deployed in the communities that these students live in, so that when they drive over the bridge to Tybee, they can point to that with their family and say, hey, we built that. We're part of this project.
This sensor, you said it's low cost. How much does one of these cost?
Less than $500. And it's not just about the cost of the sensor itself, but we've focused a lot on easy to install, easy to maintain. So we use what's called an ultrasonic sensor on the bottom that just simply measures the distance from here to the surface below. So it's the same kind of sensor that's in a modern car on the bumper to tell you when you're getting too close to the car in front of you. But instead it just measures the distance straight down.
When you're monitoring it, you get that real-time data. So if there is a flash flood event, or if there is maybe onshore winds for several days leading to higher than normal high tides, you get to see that in real time, how high those water levels are coming up to the bridges, right?
Absolutely.
For these, even though they're just in Savannah right now, how could these be applied maybe in the future once you reach the finish point of this particular project? Could this be replicated in the Atlanta area to monitor maybe flash flood events or something?
Yeah, so we got our start in Savannah, but we actually are working now with some funding we have from NOAA to expand it to the entire Georgia coast. So we have some installations in St. Mary's, and we're installing in Brunswick in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be filling in along the entire Georgia coast. But then also working inland and focusing the application more on river flooding, streams, and those kinds of things, but also a lot of interest in the impact, and we see this in Atlanta and Savannah and all over the state, intersections flooding from flash floods, those kinds of things. So we're looking at how to apply this kind of monitoring technology for those kind of more sudden events where there isn't supposed to be water there at all, yet now there's 2 feet of water and we can't drive through the intersection.
Fascinating. Dr. Ross Clark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.